Good.
Okay, hi Robert. How you doing?
Start. Hello, everybody. So glad you could come tonight. My name is Betsy Carlson, and I'm going to be the moderator for the Trustee Voter Forum. The League of Women Voters and of Central New Mexico and the Village of Los Ranchos host this tonight. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Central New Mexico, we want to thank you for coming out. We know that you're all busy and would probably rather be home having a drink, a beer or something. Anyway, we want to make a special thank you to the Village of Los Ranchos and particularly to Danielle Cedillo Molina and the employees and volunteers from the village for their help tonight. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, and it works to increase understanding of major public policy issues. And we want to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League of Women Voters of New Mexico was established in 1920, right after the 19th Amendment to the Constitution recognized women could vote. The link to the League of Women Voters in the event you want to join, we have stuff out, I don't know, what applications out there, thank you. And, but you can go to lwvcn.org if you want to know everything you want to know about voting. This year, all the races are broken into districts, and only some districts have races. And if you want to know more about what's on your ballot, please go to vote411.org, and it will be published there. We are not publishing a voter guide this year. I'd like to introduce the League members who are working tonight. Mary Mulvaney and Starlin Brown are the two important people because they're our timekeepers. Every single question will be timed. Karen Wentworth and Peggy Neff and Henry Schoner they're looking at the questions and giving questions from the audience. We really like voter participation. And questions are screened and make sure the questions are appropriate and not duplicated. So that's how the forum will work. So if your question is the same as somebody else's question, we may not use that question. So please raise your hand if you've written a question and we have not collected it, and we'll come get it. We are also, there will be no live questions from the audience. They all have to be written. We're also grateful for the attendance of our guests and our candidates, Franklin Renroe, Jennifer Kiefer, and Shalene Ann Smith. Thank you very much for coming tonight. The following guidelines. Each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute opening statement. The order has been determined by the roll of the dice. 1, 2, 3. Candidates will be asked some prepared questions, written questions will be taken from the audience, and we encourage everybody to participate. The candidates have 90 seconds to answer the questions. If they're very complex, we may increase that somewhat. Candidates will be asked the same question, and these questions were not made available to the candidates before the forum. There will be no rebuttal. Candidates are not allowed to have or use visual aids like tablets, laptops, or cell phones. Candidates will be allowed 2-minute closing statement. This is not a political rally. We want you to learn as much as you can from these great candidates that you've got. There's no campaign material that's here, but there is some out in the lobby. This is the candidate forum intended to educate. Please remember, this is not a rally. Our goal is to have fair, objective, and informative forum for everyone. Opening statements will 2 minutes per candidate. So please introduce yourself, your first name. Introduce yourself and tell us why it is that you want this job.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us here and hosting this event so that we all had the opportunity to speak. My name's Shalene Smith. You can skip my middle name. if you'd like. And I am a mother of 4. I work in public relations and government relations. I've been a relatively new addition to the Los Ranchos community. I moved here 3 years ago from Wyoming, and there I served my community of 18,000 as a city council president. I was also the chair of the planning commission at one time. I was the chair of the area water service board and served on several other state boards. So I feel like I have a pretty broad experience in local and state government. And when I got here to Los Ranchos, I really wanted to start participating in this community and get to know people here. And so I started my time here on the Agri-Futures community, or Agri-Futures group, and worked in the economic development section of that particular group. And then sometime after that, I was invited to put my name in for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so I did do that, and I'm serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission now. I've been on that since September of 2021. And then most recently, I started serving on the Citizen Advisory Committee, which is taking a look at the conservation subdivision ordinance and how we might rewrite that. Actually, you might know it as the pilot program. But I think that I'm very well qualified. I have a lot of people that I've worked with here in the community that feel like I'm a good addition to Los Ranchos. And again, I know I'm a relative newcomer compared to many of you, but I love Los Ranchos, and I really do appreciate the agricultural nature of this community, and it really resonates with me as a Wyoming native. So thank you so much. On to the next.
Good evening. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for being here. My name's Jennifer Kiefer. I'm going to start off because I was always taught start off with the elephant in the room. I'm extremely nervous, so please forgive me. I don't do this for a living. I am not a politician, but I'm a passionate resident of the village of Los Ranchos. I am a New Mexico resident. I was born and raised in the North Valley, grew up in Matthew Meadows. I went to Valley High School. I own my own business. I'm an insurance agent by trade, so I work with a lot of employers. But prior to that, I worked for the state of New Mexico. I worked for one of the largest agencies, General Services Risk Management Division, and oversaw a $350 million budget. So I'm very familiar with the procurement process, with state purchasing requirements, with contract requirements, with Open Meetings Act, with all of the things that governmental entities require. My passion came into play about a year ago. I started seeing a lot of the development going on in the village of Los Ranchos. And one of the reasons my dream as a little girl was to move to Los Ranchos was strictly for the open space, was for the animals, was for the greenery. And I saw that the city of Albuquerque starting to intrude in the village. And I wanted to stop that. So I stood at the corner of Chavez and Guadalupe with signs about the Guadalupe-Chavez development. And I informed a lot of the villagers at the market, and that's when I thought I need to start making a statement and really standing up for what I believe in.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Frank Reinau, and proud to say that my family and I have lived in the village for 34 years. We live over on Ortega Road. While we've been here, I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of people and certainly to work with a number of folks here in the village. But my background is in state and local government. You know, I've spent a good part of my career either teaching it or working with local governments around New Mexico, as well as other states, working on issues regarding comprehensive planning, strategic planning, issues revolving around human resources. I've got a background in that, certainly. and issues around what we refer to as quality improvement. How do you improve the operations of local government? And so I come with that experience into this particular position. I've done a lot of group facilitation. I've done a lot of work with especially groups who have conflicts, you know, and my role has always been to try and reach a common ground. And that's what I would try to do as a trustee. My beyond the work experience, you know, I've done volunteer work for, you know, for Albuquerque Public Schools. I've been sitting on the board for a group called Outcomes, which is a mental health agency. And I've done quite a bit of work kind of pro bono with organizations that really just cannot afford someone to come in and do strategic planning. So I think a lot of experience doing that and hope to be able to bring that kind of experience to this community. Thank you very much.
Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, Bernalillo County has a code of conduct that advises commissioners when and how to disclose conflicts of interest. Does the village need to adopt a code of conduct?
Very much so.
You have 90 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Very much so. As a matter of fact, my husband works in state government, and he works at a pretty high level. So every year I have to do a financial disclosure as his spouse. Not only does he have to do that, but I have to fill one out as well to make sure that he's not making any decisions that are going to benefit our household. I was completely floored when I found out that the Village of Los Ranchos did not have something like that. A code of conduct or financial disclosure, or what type of interests our trustees may have in their own personal investments. And I think that should, of course, be done as soon as possible. And I'm more than happy to even publicly announce now, I have no personal interests and no conflicts at this point. And I don't plan to have any conflicts within the Village of Los Ranchos as a trustee.
Frank, Bernalillo County has a code of conduct that advises commissioners when and how to disclose conflicts of interest. Does the village need that same thing?
I think it's extremely important. You know, in basically in any position that I've had in my career, whether it be as a consultant or an educator or a manager, we have signed such an agreement and make sure that we maintain the confidentiality of what we're dealing with, but as well to ensure that each of us as members of the group, whatever it may be, are straightforward and we're able then to let people know if there are in fact any kind of conflicts of interest. I don't have any with certainly the Village of Los Ranchos. I have not done any kind of work at all for them. I've done work for Bernalillo County. I've done some work for the city of Albuquerque, but never for the village. I would definitely support it, definitely support full disclosure in terms of finances, in terms of any other kind of issues that would revolve around the work that I do. And so that's something that would be dear to me, and I make sure that I would certainly participate in developing one and signing it.
Shalene?
I'll concur with Frank on this one. I think that a code of conduct is helpful in helping to make residents more comfortable with any potential conflicts of interest that could exist, and certainly clears the air on any of those types of issues. So I would definitely be in favor of that type of a
Excellent.
agreement.
Frank, can you commit to the hours required to read the agenda, attend the Board of Trustees meetings, and meet with residents as needed?
Quick answer is yes.
All right.
You know, as many of you, well, as some of you may know, that I'll be retiring from the position that I currently have in May of '24. So, you know, once that complete, and my wife still doesn't believe me, but I will be retiring in 24. But again, I'll be able to devote the time it takes in order to meet with community members, in order to meet with fellow trustees, and certainly become aware of what I can and cannot do with other trustees. But again, my purpose is going to be to serve this community. And I feel kind of honored that I've been asked to run for this position and feel that I'd be able to devote whatever time it takes. And that includes quite a bit of research that would be required in order to prepare for the Board of Trustee meetings.
Right.
It takes a lot of effort. And so I hope to be able, again, I will certainly commit to making sure that I'm available. One of the platforms that I run on is to ensure that we have participation from our community. I'll do everything I can in order to make that happen.
Shalene?
Yes, ma'am, I certainly would. I currently am on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and so I am somewhat familiar with the requirements that allows, or the time commitment there. I know the Board of Trustees, it certainly requires more time even, but that's definitely something that I am prepared for.
Jennifer?
Short answer is yes. I concur with my fellow candidates. I think most of you that have been really active and involved in the community alongside myself over this past year have really seen, I'm here for a lot of the Board of Trustee meetings. I may not speak all the time because sometimes I think the trustees get tired of hearing from me, especially because I'm very passionate on most of the issues that I address with them. But yes, I go through those manuals, and to be quite honest, I look forward to working with the mayoral elect to potentially streamline those handbooks, because those handbooks are extremely long, and nobody in their right mind at this point can digest it with the timeframes that they're currently given. So it would be working with the new administration to really streamline the information, make sure it's comprehensive information, but also given to the trustees in a timely amount to be able to do their due diligence to serve the community.
Shalene, what will the new tax revenue from the 4th and Osuna development be applied to if you are elected?
That's a great question. Well, I would say the same types of things that our tax revenues are currently applied to in that sector. I think that I know that this is a very thorny issue in our community. There are some who would like to see that development not there at all. And, I think that there's some time yet to be seen how everything develops. Right now there's housing. There's some additional commercial properties that are included in the site design. So I think that once we understand more fully how that will develop as we move forward, I think we can understand better how we'll apply those tax revenues.
Jennifer?
So I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I have all of the answers sitting here before you this evening. Again, a lot of my goal is to involve the community, is to start asking the community, what do we need? What do we want? Where do we need to spend this money? I'm also not completely sold that this particular project is going to bring in the gross receipts tax that it's claimed to be, because it is more housing than it is commercial. And housing does not bring in gross receipts tax. And so with that, we really have to look at it. We have to see how many commercial micro retails are we getting? What type of businesses are they? What type of income stream are they really providing to the village? And before we start spending any money, That's what we've currently been doing, is we've been spending and spending and putting the cart before the horse. We need to slow down, and we need to be thoughtful, and we need to figure out where's the money coming from and what are the next priority projects for the village.
Thank you, Frank.
You know, I think very similar to what's already been stated. You know, we don't know what actually is going to accrue from what is being built out on 4th and Asuna. We've had some ideas about what's going to happen, but we don't really have a clear idea at this point about what kind of revenue is going to come out of that project. You know, as I indicated before, I think the community needs to be involved in those decisions. You know, I have identified, I think, a major problem that the Board of Trustees has in trying to set some priorities for the future, and that is that oftentimes what they get in terms of the packet, in terms of information for the next meeting, is not enough for them, and well, within not enough time for them to really understand what is included in the packet, what are the priorities of the village. But we need to meet about that. We need to, and not just meet, you know, for an hour or two. These are meetings that are really going to be a lot more specific to the problem of setting priorities. But we need to do that as a community before we actually decide where we're going to spend our money.
Jennifer, what is your stance on the number of bed and breakfasts to be allowed in Los Ranchos?
Great question. So I know that there has been concern of the residents for the increased permits for bed and breakfast. Again, I'm very much, I don't have an agenda except take care of the community and what the community wants. So it would really be listening to what is the community in favor of bed and breakfast? Are they not in favor? If not, why not? Where are the locations? Maybe it's very location specific. Maybe, you know, we've got a property that has, that's isolated, and a bed and breakfast really wouldn't impede or disrupt those neighbors. Those are the specific independent issues that need to be addressed. I'm not about anti-permits or anti-development or you know, we need to stop everything. I'm about thoughtful, pragmatic solutions and looking at each thing as an independent issue.
Frank?
You know, I think that one of the issues that I have is that I really don't know how many there are. I really don't know where they're located. I really don't have an idea about what communities are dealing with B&Bs. At the other side, I need to take a look more closely, and I think the board needs to take a look more closely at the ordinance that has provided opportunities for bed and breakfast to be, you know, to be here in the village. I've taken a look at the ordinance. The ordinance, to me, seems to be, well, I think we need to review it, certainly. But when we review it, we need to review it with those, with residents, and especially those individuals who are most impacted by B&Bs in their backyard or in their neighborhoods, to try and get a sense of the kinds of issues that they see, as well as the kinds of suggestions that they would have in order for us to make sure that we establish some clarity around how we're going to go about dealing with B&Bs in the entire village.
Chilling.
So I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. We review these, and I can tell you there's not a great number of them. We might get one every few months, maybe a couple at a time. And for the most part, these properties are very well cared for. Obviously, somebody's listing them and they want people to come and stay at the property. So the properties are well taken care of. There's certain restrictions on parking, and the homeowner can put restrictions on what kind of activities happen at the properties. So to my knowledge, there's not a great number of complaints. I'm not aware of any, to be honest. There's always some concern from the neighbors that there will be parking issues or noise or other problems with people who are staying there. But as far as I'm aware, it's not a significant problem. We are a community that wants to have agritourism. It's a big part of what we promote. And I think that having bed and breakfast in our community is a nice sort of low impact way of inviting other people from outside of Los Ranchos to come into our community and be able to enjoy the same things that we do, and under a pretty well supervised system. But as always, I think that I'm all about the process, and I think that if community members feel like something needs to be addressed, looked at, that's what local government is here for.
Frank, how would you build oversight into current and future planning activities?
I said, can you repeat that again, please?
Yeah. That's into? Okay. Sorry, had a hard time reading this one. How would you build oversight into current and future planning activities?
Oh, okay. So I think that the current way it's done, I don't think is necessarily the best way to do it. I think that what is required by the village is to really have a comprehensive plan that gives us a way to look to the future, gives us a way to ascertain where development or growth should be, the types of development or growth that should go on, and set some kind of parameters to how we're going to do it. The current master plan, I think, is a start, but the current master plan really needs to be updated in order to really respond to the changes that are occurring in the village and respond to the character that we all want to see in the village. One of the issues that I think is going to be important if we do this plan, well, when we do this planning, because that's something that's on my calendar, if elected, I will certainly involve the community in doing that. And that's going to take some time to do, but it's a necessary process in order for the community to decide where we want to be in the future.
Shalene?
So I would agree with Frank that the master plan is a great place to start. And a master plan for a community is a living document. It's meant to guide, but also it's there to be added upon, revised as necessary according to the needs and desires of the residents of the community. So that's a great place to start. I also think that Village Hall needs to be a place that's well run and is prepared to handle the developers as they come in, and people who want to build homes, and help to process those permits and make sure everybody's following the ordinances as they should be. The Planning Commission is obviously a first stop, followed by Board of Trustees for some projects, and having members of those two bodies be well-trained and understand what the requirements are of those positions, I think is very critical. I would certainly encourage the Planning Commission. It's such an important way for citizens to become involved in the process. I would encourage people to participate in that. And then I serve on the Citizen Advisory Committee, and that's another way that really within the community, residents can find a way to participate and add input and create change if necessary. So I think there's a lot of different ways to participate in the process.
Jennifer, do you want me to reread it?
Yes, please.
how would you build oversight into current and future planning activities?
So I agree with my two fellow candidates. The master plan is a good place to start, but it is a starting point. It's also done 10, 15 years in the future, or for the future. It's also subject to a lot of interpretation as well. And my fear is things happen. It needs to be, the master plan needs to evolve with new projects, with new traffic studies, with new plans, with new developments that have already taken place. And I think what ends up happening is it kind of sits on a shelf and it's, well, it says we're going to do this, and we do this without much thought to the impact of our open space, our wildlife, our communities, our neighborhoods, our traffic patterns, all of those things. And so I think the citizens advisory committees are very helpful because it's a engaged process at all times. I think they need to be expanded on, but I also think the notice requirements for future developments such as ordinance changes like a conservation pilot project or a big neighborhood's going in, we need to let more people know than 400 feet from those projects. That needs to be expanded so people have the opportunity to have their voices heard.
So Shalene, what is your plan to protect open space?
I think some good work has been done already. We obviously, the village just acquired Anderson, or the property adjacent to Anderson Fields. I think that that's a really meaningful way to really put together large pieces of property, which obviously we value greatly here in Los Ranchos. It's nice to have those vistas that stretch off into the distance. I also feel in the work that I've done with the Citizen Advisory Committee that there is a place for a conservation subdivision ordinance that works for the community and for the residents. The right size, you know, we've been going through the ratios of the square footage for the homes and how much property works for developers to tackle, and it's a very complicated thing. But I do feel like there is a way to put it together that you still have people being able to utilize their property, but also maintaining the character. And so I think that, again, just going back to having community involvement, but when there's those opportunities to really nail down a big piece of property, that we take advantage of those as well.
Jennifer?
So I'm a big proponent of open space. That's one of the reasons, that was what pulled at my heartstrings to move into Los Ranchos. You know, my goal is to expand my current property one of these days as land goes up for sale, just because that's what I want. I think the village has done a great job of securing open space. I don't like the fact that it's all on Rio Grande. I think it needs to be thought out and diversified throughout the village because I think there's a linear kind of 4 streets, kind of that linear cutoff of east and west sides of the village, and I don't think that needs to be. I think there's plenty of open space that can be acquired along the 4th Street corridor as well to help with that. You know, we just went through Balloon Fiesta and they were hurting for landing spots. I think the village can really be part of that solution for the city of Albuquerque as well. I think, you know, the conservation pilot project plan as done was far from conservation. They used the FAR as their determination, so we got nothing in that. And so it scares me having ordinances like that that aren't thought of, still on the books, and still able for builders to build on.
Frank?
Open space is on everybody's mind. It's on everybody's mind. You know, and I think that what what we need to be able to do is to make some decisions about the kind of open space that we want and what's the purpose of it. You know, open space for the sake of open space is one thing, but if we're going to use it to, you know, to protect wildlife, if we're going to use it again for a park, which I certainly would support, if we're going to use it as to beautify the village, I would think that those are important elements, but we need to understand how we're going to use it and what are the priorities from village residents about the use of open space. I certainly agree with Jennifer that it needs to be diversified. We have space available around the village, but we need to make sure that when we do that plan, that we have buy-in from the residents who are directly impacted by it, as well as we get buy-in from the broader village, because it's going to potentially amount to dollars that we need to spend. You know, so again, we need to be thoughtful about it, and we need to proceed in a way that ensures that we maintain the same kind of character for the Village of Los Ranchos.
Jennifer, what do you see as the biggest challenge in the village, and what would be your plans to address it?
The biggest challenge, I think there's a few challenges. I think one of the biggest that I really had issue with as a resident was the lack of communication throughout the village. I think we've got a great means of communication. We use the village vision, but it's for everything that's already happened. It's the meeting notes that have already happened. It's everything that has already happened. So it does not allow the villagers to have a sense of voice in the community. I think we really need to enable various modes of communication, embrace technology, but there are people that don't want to look on Facebook or Instagram or, you know, and want to use the village vision. So we need to figure out, how do we be proactive in our communication within the vision magazine that's already being sent out to really engage people on important issues that are coming either before planning and zoning or coming before the Board of Trustees that are going to impact them and or their neighbors.
Frank, what do you see as the biggest challenge in the village, and what would be your plan to address it?
You know, I think I've said this to a number of folks before, you know, so I'm going to repeat myself again.
That's okay.
But I think the biggest challenge for us is to determine who we want to be. Who we want to be. We're surrounded by Bernalillo County, by the city of Albuquerque. We have, certainly to the north, we have our neighbor in Corrales. We have on the hill, we have Rio Rancho. You know, and the village has sort of been kind of the cut through for everybody to travel where they, to their own homes and where they reside. So I think that what we need to be able to do, though, is to say, listen, you know, where we want to be in the next 15, 20 years is going to have to address the kinds of neighbors that we're dealing with. And that would be something, I think, as a trustee that I'd certainly want to get involved in. Because, you know, when we look at open space, we look at density of housing, and we take a look at, you know, at the kinds of other developments going on 4th Street and what's going on at the corner of 4th and Osuna, we need to be more reasoned about it. We need to take the time that it takes in order to get it done. And that may mean, and certainly that's going to involve the residents of the village.
Thank you. Charlene?
Do you want to read that for me one more time?
I will.
Thank you.
If I can find it. So efficient. Okay, yeah. What do you see as the biggest challenge in the village, and what would be your plans to address it?
So I see a lot of issues, given the different things I'm involved in and the different people that I speak with. And I would have to say that having I don't know, there has to be open and honest communication between the community members about what really are we trying to achieve in all of the things that we do. And understanding that we have to create a sense of place that's not similar to what Frank is saying here. What do we really hope to build as we go forward into the future? Obviously, there's a tremendous heritage here that reflects the agricultural nature of this community, but also there's a need to move forward and to be able to, over the years, transition this community into the hands of people that we're just raising up right now. And so it's always, I think, important to look back and look forward. And certainly deciding on those things is important as a community, and then having just open and honest communication where you get people together to help decide what the best way forward is.
Frank, what do you think should happen north of Pueblo Solano on 4th Street?
You have an hour?
90 seconds.
Yeah, that, I mean, I think that one of the issues that we have inherited, and I think that it was said earlier, that we have tended to chase the money. And again, we don't want to say no to the dollars, but at the same time, we want to have some clarity around what we want to see past El Pueblo. We need to, it seems to me, well, a couple of things. We want to maintain we want to maintain the village character. We don't want to turn it into a lot of lights and sidewalks. We want to make sure it's safe for people to walk along it. We want to make sure not only for walkers, but for bikers and for other modes of transportation. And we need to also make sure that those who are impacted by whatever development goes on 4th Street are involved. Now, the other part of that, though, is that you have some very critical lanes in the village. One is 4th Street and one is Rio Grande. Those should not be limited to only people who live right next to 4th Street or Rio Grande. It should be something that all village residents should have an opportunity to understand and to participate in.
Charlene? What do you think should happen north of Pueblo Solano on 4th Street?
I think continuing our 4th Street improvement is important to continue to improve the business environment here in Los Ranchos. I do think that creating pedestrian-friendly areas is necessary, and I think that it does help our businesses to enjoy more of that foot traffic that we had hopefully planned for a while back when the master plan was written this past time. I think that we should definitely continue to encourage business development that direction. And again, I'm just going to go back to community input is critical. And I would, if I were as a Board of Trustees member, I would want to make sure to spend time visiting with the people in that area and the businesses and use those opinions to help inform my own.
Jennifer?
So I think this is very important. We've kind of done two things, in my opinion, that have contradicted one another. We've put a high-density housing project on 4th and Osino while we have skinnied down 4th Street, which is completely, I can't wrap my head around that logic, but it is what we're dealing with. So I think we need to look and figure out with the continuation of the 4th Street project, is that really what we need? Is that really what we want? And how do we how do we make it work? Because we know we're going to have greater traffic, whether we want it or not, because of the Fourth and Osuna project. But we also want to slow things down. I would want to get out there and talk to those businesses. From what I understand is a lot of those businesses are being forgotten because they're not Los Ranchos businesses, they're county businesses. And so they're being told, your opinion doesn't matter. I think all businesses matter because especially locally owned businesses have more to lose when that is their bread and butter as a community member than some of us that may not own our own businesses. So I don't have an immediate answer. It would really be engaging the community and being thoughtful again, rather than just spending money because we have it.
I have to make sure I ask her all the questions. Shirlene, how should the village address potential parking problems with the Palindrome project?
Well, the project itself, going through the approval process with the village, there's certain requirements for parking. That's kind of, it's part of the way that the development process goes. So we have what we have there. But I would say one of my, and I hate to shift, but one of my primary concerns is with the traffic. And I do feel like we need to have, I think that the Palindrome people need to visit with the village to help address some of these concerns that we all have about the traffic. And I'll include parking with that. They need to come in with something additional to help remedy some of that. The village government has done what it could through the requirements of the development project.
Jennifer, what's your thoughts?
So this project is in my backyard. I live within walking distance to this project, and I'm very sensitive to the individuals whose side streets are going to be impacted with this project. When there's only 50% of parking for the amount of units, that's extremely concerning. I don't have the answer. Now, the future is going to be the village still owns the other phases of that property, and so it's going to be stopping everything until we get the parking situation figured out. The problem is they're probably going to be rented before we even make it to those phases. So there's going to be a significant challenge. I don't know the answer. I know one of the things I've talked to people on the surrounding streets about is maybe the village issues parking passes for the people that live there. And you have to have a parking pass, and your visitors have to have a parking pass, and if they don't, then those vehicles get towed. But we're going to have to figure out something immediately before we can rectify it with the future phases. And again, it's going to really be engaging those individuals that live in those streets that are going to be affected with people randomly parking in their front yards.
Frank?
Well, I think much like Jennifer, the concern that I really have is as the housing project is completed and people start moving in, and if there are not parking spaces available for all those units, where people are going to park. And my concern is with the communities and the residents that are directly impacted, the ones that are north, ones that are west and south of the Fourth and Osuna project. Unfortunately, they may be the ones to take the brunt of the parking problem. And what we need to do, and I think we need to be able to at least control that the parking in those areas. It could be by providing passes to those who are living in the area, or it could be increased police presence that would, again, increase our budget for for the sheriff's department, but they need to be with us in terms of trying to reduce the amount of parking and traffic that's going to be going on through those communities. You know, so those, and again, I don't have all the answers to that, but I'm definitely interested in meeting with residents to talk about that. So,
Jennifer, how would you envision working with the community to make sure interests and input are reflected in the board's goals and agenda?
Great question. So I think really it goes back to utilizing the village vision. I also kind of see a page being, kind of instead of ask Dear Abby, ask the trustees. Ask questions and let the trustees be able to respond to citizens' questions. Also attending meetings. I know we have a lot of neighborhood associations. I'd be more than happy to attend those neighborhood associations as invited and as I can to really hear from those communities. I think it's all going to go back to communication. How can we help? How can we support the residents? And what are the residents needing or wanting? And listening to that and helping the mayoral-elect with that information draft agendas to make sure that those issues are addressed.
Frank?
can you repeat the question again?
I can. How do you envision working with the community to make sure interests and input are reflected in the board's goals and agenda?
I mean, well, let's work backwards for a moment. Because I think that the agenda for the Board of Trustees is something that we need to that we need to set well before the time where there's a decision that needs to be made. I think that's part of the problem that the board has had in talking with several board members is that they're not getting information very quickly. But at the same time, when we do that, we need to alert the residents to what's going on. So if there are projects that are coming up that the trustees need to be working on, that as residents, you need to know what those projects are as well. And it could be that what we do is we hold a series of information meetings. And I know that people are tired of meetings, and I understand that. But we hold a series of information meetings where that kind of, where it can be discussed and people ask questions, and we're able then to, to identify as a community what we can do in order to solve those problems. So it comes down to opening up communication with the community, let them know what's going on in terms of the agenda, have an agenda that is 6 months or a year out so that people understand then where they can participate.
Charlene?
Can you read that
read
one
that
more
again?
time? Thank
Sure.
you.
How do you envision working with the community to make sure interests and input are reflected in the board's goals and agenda?
So over and over again, I hear the word transparency. And I do think that it's really critical that Village Hall is communicating what's going on at the government level to our residents. And whether that's through community outreach meetings, through the Village Vision, the website is a great way to do outreach, but again, you have to have people look at it. Same with Facebook and other social media outlets. But I do think it's absolutely critical that the village government makes every effort possible to inform our residents. And maybe that's also through outreach to some of the community organizations that we have in neighborhood associations and making sure that perhaps we have a liaison with those groups so that we're able to more efficiently disseminate information. I would also say that I think, in the past, I've done types of meetings or like coffee meet and greets and that kind of thing. And I think having regular meetings where there's just a very casual environment, people can stop by and visit with their their representatives on the board. I think that would be really helpful to allow folks to have a more informal environment to discuss issues that are coming before the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Frank, what is your opinion of the Conservation Development Ordinance? I know, I always give you the hard ones. I'm sorry, you're first.
Okay, I think that the intention of the ordinance was to put aside land so that individuals can enjoy the benefits of this community in terms of wildlife, in terms of its beauty, in terms of of what it does in order to really propel people to continue living here in the village. Unfortunately, I think that it hasn't, well, we don't know exactly how it's going to turn out yet, but it certainly appears that it's kind of an adjunct to the development that's going on at Guadalupe and Chavez Road. So again, I don't have an answer quite yet in terms of how to deal with that, but I think we need to make it more robust so that there's guidelines in place in terms of how it's going to be used and how it's going to be developed.
Thank you, Frank. Charlene, do you want me to read it again?
Sure, why not?
What is your opinion of the Conservation Development Ordinance?
Well, I could give you a very technical answer because I've spent several months working on that.
Sure.
And I could give you a really, high-level type of answer. I think that we have a group of people who are working diligently to create an ordinance that will work for this community. It's not easy to do. There's a lot of different interests to consider. We have, property rights of the owners of these pieces of land. You've got developers or home builders, maybe families who are trying to split up a piece of property. And then we have other residents who see something that's been there for a long time and they don't want it to change. And then the village is supposed to somehow legislate all of that. And it's a very complicated process. During my time on the Citizen Advisory Committee, we've had home builders come in, we've had property owners come in, we've had different members of the community share their opinions. And I think the thing I'm most proud about is we started with something that nobody really liked very much. And over a period of time, we were all working together to create something that we all feel it's been built by consensus. I'll tell you, probably not everybody's 100% happy with what we've come to, but it's been done by consensus. And it's something that, we're hopeful that everybody can live with it. So I think that's the way to accomplish change in ordinances and other channels of government. So,
Jennifer, I know you have an opinion.
I do. So just because I'm running for election, I'm not going to hide behind my opinion. My opinion is it was a very poorly thought out pilot project that I think could have been stopped because it was pilot and there was verbiage in that project that would have allowed it to be stopped, and that didn't happen. So now we're kind of stuck with it. My belief is what it was in the very beginning. This is what got me going with the village of Los Ranchos was when I stood at that corner of Chavez and Guadalupe to inform people is because one, I saw the deficiency of who was being informed. And two, I told people, I don't care if you support it. I don't care if you're against it. Show up to the meeting. And guess what? On June 8th, that first meeting, we had standing room only, and there were people outside of Village Hall that couldn't even get inside because people felt passionately about it. We didn't really start realizing what the ordinance was about until we started digging a little deeper. And I think that uncovered and we started peeling the layers of the onion, and we started seeing the project. Then we started seeing Village Center. Then we started seeing all of these things that we're very passionate about. I don't want to infringe on property rights, but A1 property is 9 houses. That's what it should have been.
Charlene, should the village have a set of metrics that requires all new subdivisions to have a 90% of units dedicated to owner, occupied, and affordable?
Yeah.
Sure. Should the village have a set of metrics that requires all new subdivisions to have 90% of units dedicated to owner, occupied, and affordable housing? Pardon?
Yeah.
Oh, versus renters is what I'm thinking, what it's meant to be, versus renters. So 90% of the occupants would own their homes or their condos or whatever. That's a question. We don't have metrics, I don't think.
I would have to say no. I'll tell you, and I'll try to give you just an answer that hopefully fits in with the question, although I would just say no. Affordable housing is something in this community that is somewhat open to interpretation. The median housing price is $420,000 in 2018. That was pre-pandemic. So as you can imagine, it's probably somewhat higher now. So if you want to try to require affordable housing for homeowners, I think you're trying to crack a nut that you're just not going to be able to do. Rental housing allows people that cannot get over that barrier of entry of maybe a down payment or credit scores that can allow them to get a mortgage to have housing. I think it's an important component of any community to have rental housing. If you were to, look at a subdivision and say, you can't have any rental housing here and it has to be affordable, you might have a really hard time getting a developer to take on a project like that because it probably wouldn't be financially feasible.
Jennifer, you want me to read it again?
Sure.
Should the village have a set of metrics that requires all new subdivisions to have a 90% of units dedicated to owner-occupied and affordable housing?
Okay. So I'm stumped with the question myself because I think of owner-occupied versus affordable housing as two separate ideas.
Yeah.
And so I guess my flat-out answer would be no. I think the village of Los Ranchos is special. It's unique. We've got and I don't know if this is going to answer the question, but it gives me an opportunity. We've got very diverse incomes. We've got very diverse culture. We've got very diverse just community in general, and we need to protect that. And we need to make sure that we're not hurting our longstanding citizens either by trying to force into our community issues that are big city issues. And so I'm very much of protecting property rights for owners, protecting property rights for those that are here, but also protecting the village and the community as a whole with what really makes us unique, which is our diversity.
Frank, you want me to?
Likewise, it's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question.
And again, I think that at the core of the issue is for us to make some decisions about, first, where, what do we want in terms of affordable housing? What needs to be the mix? What needs to be the mix of affordable housing with other types of housing that are in the village? I'm certainly not against affordable housing, but I think we need to have a way to identify what is affordable, quote unquote, within the village that will, again, be able to attract new residents to the village, but at the same time, protect what we all love and what we all really enjoy about the village of Los Ranchos. In terms of the metric, I think that comes out of the discussion that we have about what is affordable, and comes out of the discussion about what should be the mix of affordable versus other types of housing, in order for us to be clear about then what we need to do in terms of proceed to ordinance, so that we can make some decisions about how we're going to handle it in the future.
Thank you. Jennifer. Share your thoughts on preserving the agricultural heritage of the village while supporting and enhancing economic development.
So, great question. How can we support agriculture with supporting income, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we really need to take care of our local farmers, our local communities. We need to make sure that we're providing them the tools and the assets that they need to farm their land, whether it's just a large property on Rio Grande that has alfalfa fields. I know there's been discussion with some of those individuals that they can't even get access to tractors. So making sure we provide those tools, and then making sure we look at a strategic plan of how do we make it profitable for these farmers to come in and help these residents that have these larger properties that can be used for agricultural purposes. It's really starting a dialogue, I think, in talking with some of the owners of these large properties to see, are they interested? If so, what would they be interested in? And how do we keep these individuals in wanting to preserve their large piece of property rather than break it up and subdivide it? And how do we make that income producing and beneficial back to the village as well as to them?
Thank you. Frank, share your thoughts on preserving the agricultural heritage of the village while supporting and enhancing economic development.
I think that agriculture could certainly contribute to our economic development in the village. And what, again, I think is important, I mean, as you drive around the village, you see not only large chunks of, large parcels of land that are agricultural, but you see backyards that are agricultural as well. And I think that we need to make it more, I think we need to be more helpful to the farmers at any stage to be able to provide, certainly for their families, and provide the resource to the village. And I think the other part of it, though, is that we also need to provide opportunities for the next generation of farmers. When I was a kid from New York originally, my dad had this idea that it would be wonderful for me to go upstate New York and learn about farming. And so for a summer, I was a member of what's called the Farm Cadet Program at that time. And I learned about farming. I learned how to do it, and I learned about the machinery. I was driving a tractor when I was 12 years old, and that was pretty cool. But but what I got from it, though, was some real understanding about what it takes to farm, At that point, I decided I didn't want to be a farmer. It was hard work. But at the same time, I really had an appreciation for what it takes in order to do that. And I think we need to make sure that the farmers that are here in the village know that they're appreciated and know that we're going to support them, purchase their product, invite them to help us to develop our own farms on lesser lands, and then be able to hopefully develop the next generation as well.
Shalene, do you want me to read it again?
Yeah.
Share your thoughts on preserving the agricultural heritage of the village while supporting and enhancing economic development.
I think the agri-future committee has been very helpful. I think they've done a lot of good work, and they're trying to promote economic development and agritourism through the groups that are part of the larger project. I think that that's a really nice way that our village works to help on this particular thing. I do believe that to make, so I work in agriculture. We actually, we are cattle ranchers, and I'm very familiar with the economic challenges of agriculture, whether you're farming or ranching or, you know, raising horses, whatever it is. It's not a money-making endeavor, and it's hard work. And a good friend of mine is a farmer here in the community, and he just had a very challenging time. He's a successful farmer, and he had a very hard time making a living at it. He had a very hard time finding a home to live in here in the community, and it's just a real challenge. I think that some of these larger things like Los Poblanos is a perfect example. Casa Rodena, you know, we have these businesses that are utilizing agriculture to help bring people into our community, and they're creating successful businesses around that. And I think that that's a really good way for Village Hall to support those kind of, to support agriculture in this community.
Thank you. Frank, what area do you feel you can make the biggest impact and why, if you're elected?
What area, I'm sorry?
What area do you feel you can make the biggest impact and why?
When we take a look at the projects that the village has already signed off on, and projects that are in plans for, other plans for the future of the village, one of the things that kind of strikes me is that what we have lost is clarity in terms of how the Board of Trustees makes its decisions and how they're able then to move forward, in order to ensure that, again, as residents, that your voices are going to be heard on the Board of Trustees. So I think the biggest impact that I could make, okay, is to really take a look very seriously at what is the working relationship between the board, the mayor, as well as with P&Z, okay, and certainly with residents. And we need to be able to invite them more into the work that we do, okay? But I think the biggest impact is going to be how we're able to reconstruct the board so that it really has a voice in the village governance.
Charlene, what area do you feel you can make the biggest impact and why?
Every community has its unique challenges, but also many things are similar in the way that communities function and how projects get done, how we govern our communities. A lot of that is very similar. And I am a very practical person. I tend to be very a consensus builder. I like to talk to as many people as I can to get as many different opinions and input on how to problem solve. And I look to build consensus among the people that I work with. And so I would hope that on the Board of Trustees, I would be able to provide a listening ear and a reasonable mind that would hopefully help us to sort out some of these issues that are creating such conflict in our community at this time. It's really not a healthy way for a community to function as we are currently. And so that's something I really would want to focus on. And it would certainly be something that would be a day-to-day effort on my part to understand more fully the different opinions in this community and how we could move forward within the confines of how government works, because you have to follow the rules and the processes. And if you don't like something, you can change it, but you have to go through the process.
Jennifer, you want to read it again?
Yes, please.
Okay.
It's getting late.
What area do you feel you can make the biggest impact and why?
So I think I can make the biggest impact of returning the voice of the villagers back to the Board of Trustees. And I know that probably sounds very like, ooh, that's, the in thing to say, but I really felt over the last year that my voice, speaking for myself, on a lot of very important issues, on a lot of things that really are going to change our village and the aesthetics of our village, that I wasn't heard. That there wasn't any type of, I did my 2-minute speech at the podium, like so many of you did, and I got the typical, okay, now we're gonna vote. And it was boom, 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 without any public process, without any public discourse, without any very good dialogue as to why. And my goal is, in working as a trustee, to start asking questions of the administration, whoever that may be, of why, and listening to the public and really standing up for what the public wants rather than just, kind of checking the box as we go.
Sorry, I'm not, nobody can hear me. I'm not yelling. What effect should global warming have on the village policies and your work if elected as a trustee?
I think one of the primary issues that we can see currently is water in this community. And I think addressing water issues is certainly going to be a priority going forward. And how that happens, I'm not sure exactly. I think that it requires, again, back to community input. How do we want to go forward together as we, are, and I hate to say this, there's a lot of people with beautiful front yards. Do we want to have people with their sprinklers on every day keeping these giant yards green? Is that a good idea? Using their well water? I'm not sure. But it's probably something that at some point would probably be a good idea to look at. And I think there's other things that we can take into account as we develop water policy for our community in the future. And that would probably be one of the primary things I could think of right away. Certainly there's, zero escaping standards. There's promotion of solar energy that could be a part of the village programs. There's several things that I think as Village Hall members, we could help to create a more climate-friendly program.
Jennifer, do you want me to read again?
Yes, please.
What effect should global warming have on the village policy and your work if elected as a trustee?
So I think this is a great question. I agree completely with Shailene that water is a big issue. We know water. But I think it even is more important for the village because we depend on our canopies. The city of Albuquerque depends on the canopies of the village of Los Ranchos to keep the temperature down in the city of Albuquerque. We run about a 10-degree difference, and it's funny because, the city of Albuquerque was all about zero-scape, 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 and now they're having tree planting sessions because they said, we need trees, we need that shade cover. Without the shade cover, you're causing more evaporation, which is then automatically affecting the watershed. So we need to understand the balance between the various mechanisms within nature. It's not all one way or another. So we really need to protect the green space we have. It goes back to the agriculture, making sure that we're helping and supporting that. We're keeping our trees alive. We're not letting them die because we need those canopies to help to help with the water situation, and everything directly affects itself.
Frank.
Can you read a question again?
I can. What effect should global warming have on village policy and your work if elected as a trustee?
again, as my fellow candidates here have expressed, I mean, certainly water is a major issue. And be able then to work with residents and trying to help them understand what we can do in order to save the aquifer that we all depend on. But beyond water, the open space, the green space that we have needs to be preserved. And again, we may decide to use some of that green space in order to provide additional opportunities for agriculture. But I think that that we as a village, though, need to have kind of a policy on how we go about planning it and how we go about actually developing the space that we need in order to preserve the canopy, as Jennifer's talking about, which I think is extremely important. But the other part of it, though, is that we need to get residents kind of engaged, because you all may have some ideas that we haven't thought of. You may have experienced, different things that we could use in order to be able to provide, the open space that we need. In terms of what we're going to do with it, how we're going to develop it. I'm sorry.
We're at the end of the forum. We're going to let our candidates who have done so well tonight, thank you so much, give us 2 minutes to wrap it up. We're going to start with Jennifer, and then we'll go to Frank, and we'll go to Charlene, and thank you all. Okay.
Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for coming out tonight. Like I said, I was extremely nervous at the very beginning of this. I've kind of settled in a little bit, but I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I do. What I do have is I have the ability to listen, I have the ability to communicate, and I have the ability to fight for what the residents want. I think most of you have heard my passionate pleas from the podium throughout the last year or so. And it comes from a true, sincere place, because the reason I moved to Los Ranchos was for the rural atmosphere, where I could go work in the city, but I could come home to some peace. And I don't want to see that being deteriorated. I grew up with animals. My grandparents lived down in the Guarelas area, and I grew up spending a lot of time with them, and they lived right by the zoo, and so I could hear the lions roar and the peacocks crow, and my neighbor's like, oh, the peacocks. And I laugh, because to me that's a peaceful noise. So, I really want to help this village reclaim its identity, bring peace back into the village, and work with the mayor-elect to do what's right by the villagers and listen and bring your issues forward and really speak for the people.
Frank.
Again, thank you all for coming out tonight. That's greatly appreciated. I never planned on trying to run for elective office. It was never part of my master plan. Never part of my master plan. But in attending Board of Trustee meetings, getting to know many of you, talking about the issues that you have that were certainly similar to mine, I kind of came away with a feeling that this is an opportunity for me to contribute to the village of Los Ranchos. In my career, as I mentioned earlier, I've done quite a bit of work with local government, and I want to be able to bring that again back to the village of Los Ranchos. I am certainly passionate about the open space, about agriculture, and really kind of defining and redefining a sense of community. And I'm not only talking here about structurally what goes on in the community, but I'm talking about trying to bring together individuals who want who want the same things as we all do, okay? And there may be differences of opinion. And I'm not going to say that I know all the answers. I'm not going to say that I have certainly the one best solution that's always going to work. But, you know, if we have difference of opinion, you'll always know where I stand. You'll always know where I stand. And I think that's important in terms of me being transparent in terms of what I do. And again, I certainly invite all of you to talk to me either one-on-one or in small groups. I kind of take away, you know, the position that Ray Sanchez used to do. Okay, thank you.
Shellene.
So people ask me, why do I like to go to all these meetings that I go to? And I'll tell you, I don't really have any hobbies. I don't really ski or go fishing. Serving my community is something that I really enjoy doing. And I enjoy the ability to make a difference. And I've learned over time that it's really easy to have lofty goals. I think that's important as residents of a community, to have lofty goals. That's what guides us. But also, it's important to find the answers to how are you going to do that. And that's one thing that I probably tend to be a little too practical, but I do think that it's important to always look for the how. How will you get there? Is it possible? Is there a way to get there? And this is, you know, what I can tell you about myself is that I'm more than happy to take on a lofty goal. I've been involved in several very large-scale projects over my time in serving my communities, but I've been able to see the how do you get that done, and it's usually step by step, and it doesn't come quickly. But I do feel that here in Los Ranchos, it's important that we take these problems that we're all facing head on, and we work together to try to move forward. Los Ranchos has, it's going to be a different place 20 or 30 years from now, and it's important that we get through this period of time that we're in currently so that we can start to look ahead at how do we address some of those things that lie ahead in the future. And those are things that I like to focus on as well. I think that this is a wonderful community. I'm really happy that I get to be a part of it. And hopefully, whether I'm on the Board of Trustees or not, I'm going to continue to serve this community to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Well, that's it. And thank you all, and thank you to the candidates particularly. Thank you very much. Great job. Everyone, please have a safe drive home or walk home. And remember, early voting starts October 21st. Make sure you vote and have everybody in your household vote. We need to keep our democracy strong. Thank you. Bye-bye. Yep, great job. Thank you. And here you are late.